Okay, so Medi Hasan has a program called Head to Head, and he's had other programs. I can't remember the names of them, but he's uh, he's pulling in people to heads of state and others to talk to them and about the things that they're accused of doing. Now, while I do like Mehdi Hassan, I don't think he. I think he also has a tendency to bring in uh, others on the panel who are just as bad as the people that he brings in to sit across from him, and he doesn't push back on the nonsense and the lies that his panel will spout. For instance, I just finished watching a head to head on Al Jazeera with Mehdi Hassan, and he had Eric Prince on. Now he did a lot of pushback on obviously on Eric Prince, but he had a British ex colonel who owns a mercenary company, which they put security, private security outfit. And then he had this Sean McFate, some dullard idiot out of Washington who also who's also in the security business. So, anyways, aside from Prince, who is an evil bastard who should be in jail, if not sentenced to death, along with his insipid, evil sister, Betsy DeVos. But this Sean McFate, he goes on and uses a term I've used, but he's doing the usual, oh, the West is good, and everybody else is a dictator and a murderer and a killer, and so on and so forth. So he's talking about how China has been using its economic power to give out loans so that for working on to work on infrastructure to other countries, and how if they can't pay it back, the Chinese have fixed it to so that they can word it in such a way that they can take control of ports and other infrastructure projects that they make loans to, and that may very well be true. As a matter of fact, I think that is probably is true of what China is doing. But Sean McFate, and he would know this, okay, because he's certainly clearly not stupid, should know that the U.S. has done this for decades upon decades upon decades. U.S. is famous for using this tactic, as well as using NGOs and others to do the exact same thing that he accuses China of doing, that he accuses Iran of doing, that he accuses everybody and anybody who's not a Western government. So, I want to clear up something. The U.S. has reports, and it seems to fluctuate. But the more respectable investigative journalists, the ones who don't have anything that they can really gain from their reporting, who have no agenda aside from their moral, ethical obligations responsible obligations, objective obligations to tell the truth, have pointed out that there are 1,000, possibly even more, U.S. bases all over the world. Many of them are small, with a small group of special forces, quote unquote special forces, all over the world. Many of them in Africa with the special forces who aren't reported on. They're not even on the books officially. So, what is this all getting down to? It gets down to what Sean McFate used. That mafia boss statement of his. Well, let me see. The Saudis, and they made a movie of this, okay, that they made a movie, Hollywood made a movie about this, how the Saudis were upset even though they had originally made an agreement, but later on, they, because of what the military base in Saudi Arabia and the U.S. military base in Saudi Arabia was doing, and how they are using that base as a stepping stone for the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War, and then later into Afghanistan and everywhere in the Middle East. The Saudis had asked that the U.S. leave, and they didn't want the base. The U.S., like the mafia boss it is, against their own ally, basically said, go take a jump in the lake. Gave you a big fuck you to the Saudis, which contributed, in part, to the Saudis funding the terrorist act of 9/11. Well, the quote-unquote terrorist act of 9/11. That's semantics as far as I'm concerned. Let's go back even further. How about how the U.S. did the same exact tactic, the same exact crime, in establishing bases, U.S. military bases, in South Korea or in Japan after World War II, or the supposed after World War II. There's a lot of propaganda and misinformation involved in just those two. But let's jump to the future, okay? And let's talk about how the South Koreans government has asked, no, they didn't ask, they demanded the U.S. leave. But again, the mafia boss at the U.S. basically said, gave you a big fuck you. Japanese, later on in history, asked the same thing. Again, the U.S. mafia boss did the big fuck you. Oh, let's talk about after the Spanish-American War and how Guam, okay, was taken and forced to accept U.S. military bases, and how the and how Guam became a forced colonial territory, and they gave it big fuck you. Or how the Philippines had the same thing done, again, with a big fuck you. Or how Hawaii, again, the same thing happened in Hawaii, with a big mafia, big fuck you. Or how they did this in Puerto Rico, another big fuck you. Again, another mafia tactic. Or how they got Guantanamo Bay. Another big fuck you. And how the Cubans asked and demanded that Guantanamo, that the U.S. leave. Nope, a big fuck you. Or let's even go to the English. Okay, England has a big Air Force base, and guess what? Again, the English asked for a couple of things. One, more control when they were told, nope, sorry, by the U.S. mafia boss. They went at one point and asked that the U.S. leave. that air base, that military base, be turned over to English sovereignty. Nope. Again, a big fuck you. And this is U.S. ally, one of U.S.'s greatest allies. Nope. Again, a big fuck you. Or how about the U.S. military base in Germany? Again, the same thing happened. That happened in England. The U.S. mafia boss gave another big fuck you and told them, no, you can't. This is a common thread of just a few tiny some of big fuck you mafia boss attitude and criminality of the U.S. government and the U.S. dictators and terrorists. I could name hundreds more all over the world of the U.S. mafia boss using the exact same tactics. What Sean McFate accuses all others of doing. Gee, how is that possible? Panama, another big fuck you mafia boss tactic. Interesting, huh? Is there a fucking theme going on here? Oh yeah, there's a goddamn theme. The U.S. is the biggest mafia boss criminal organization there is. And when I and let me clarify. It is the U.S. government, not the U.S. people, but the U.S. government and its propaganda and its seditious treason of withholding information or spinning it or misrepresenting it or keeping it out of the news altogether. That is what the U.S. government has stood for hundreds of years. The same tactics that the Western European countries did. The same thing that the Russians did. Same thing that the Eastern Europeans, which were not European, Eastern Europeans, which were not the part of the EU, have done. That includes the Norwegian countries. No. The biggest mafia bosses are from European and Western states. Western governments. They are the biggest tyrannical, murderous, pillaging, and rampaging criminals in the world and in all of history. So, I mean, let me make this point. What the Mongols did, the Mongols were kittens compared to what the Western world has been doing, and for far longer. Yeah. The U.S. is the dawn of dawns when it comes to being mafia bosses. And Sean McFate is a criminal, seditious traitor. Because what he's espousing, what he's spouting, the lies that he's spouting, has killed more Americans because they have been sent to fight a fictional enemy that doesn't exist. Has helped to create enemies, real enemies, that did not exist. That is what the mafia government, the so-called mafia government of the U.S. and Western nations have created. No, the only true criminal gangs and mafia bosses are in the U.S. and are in the Western world. The ones that are sowing chaos and destruction and pillaging and plundering, raping and murdering, and bringing out just this depression and insanity everywhere that they look, that they put their little beady little eyes, their greedy, evil, malicious, malignant eyes on. Sean McFate is a fraud. And the fact that Medi Hasan didn't even push back on that, didn't correct that such heinous accusation, that's just bullshit. You know, Medi is just doing the programs that he does so that he can get, ooh, look at me, look at me, look at me, I'm so good, I'm so good. When he rarely ever pushes back on all of the inaccuracies and all the lies that his guests spout. The very things that he says he's against. How is he any different from the mainstream media? Well, not mainstream, corporate media, sorry. I have to stop calling him mainstream. The corporate seditious propaganda traders that are called media news in the West. Or state-sponsored propaganda news outlets in the West. You know, I every single time I watch Medi Hasan, now that he's gotten all this attention, disappoints me. He was better when he was doing stuff for The Intercept. Now he seems to be pandering somewhat to get ratings, to get fame. Yeah, anyways, that's all I got to say.